Section 9. Motorway driving. In this section, you'll learn about how to drive safely on motorways, the speed limits that apply on motorways and how they're used to avoid congestion, the markings used on motorway lanes, what to do if your car breaks down on the motorway. Before you start motorway driving, motorways are designed to help traffic travel at constant, higher speeds than on single carriageways. Due to the traffic's speed, situations on motorways can change more quickly than on other roads, so you need to be especially alert at all times. Why do you think it is particularly important to check your vehicle before making a long motorway journey? Select the correct answer. You'll have to do more harsh braking on motorways. Motorway services areas don't deal with breakdowns. The road surface will wear down the tires faster. Continuous high speeds increase the risk of your vehicle breaking down. Start your journey, make sure that your vehicle can cope with the demands of high-speed driving. You should check a number of things, the main ones being fuel, oil, water, and tires. You also need to plan rest stops if you're making a long journey. Tip: learner drivers may have driving lessons on motorways but only with an approved driving instructor, ADI, and in a car fitted with dual controls that's clearly displaying L plates, D plates in Wales. Pedestrians and horse riders can't use a motorway. The following vehicles can't be used on a motorway: bicycles, motorcycles under 50 cc, most powered wheelchairs/mobility scooters, agricultural vehicles, some slow-moving vehicles. Before you start your journey, make sure that your vehicle can cope with driving on the motorway. When you join the motorway from a slip road, adjust your speed to match the speed of the traffic already on the motorway. Give way to traffic already on the motorway. All traffic, whatever its speed, should normally use the left-hand lane of the motorway. Use the middle and right-hand lanes only for overtaking other vehicles and return to the left lane when you've finished overtaking.
You should normally only overtake on the right.
However, you may overtake on the left if traffic is moving slowly in queues and the queue on your right is moving more slowly than the one you're in. Where the motorway goes uphill steeply, there may be a separate lane for slow-moving vehicles. This helps the faster-moving traffic to flow more easily. If you're traveling in the left-hand lane and traffic is joining from a slip road, move to another lane if you're able to do so safely. This helps the flow of traffic joining the motorway, especially at peak times. Countdown markers on the left-hand verge show that you're approaching the next exit. If you want to leave the motorway, try to get into the left-hand lane in plenty of time.
If you accidentally go past the exit you wanted, carry on to the next one. Never try to stop and reverse. Self-reflection point.
Does the thought of driving on motorways make you anxious?
Your instructor will only take you on a motorway when you're ready.
They'll be able to help you prepare by
talking through the practical driving skills you'll need to drive on motorways,
giving you techniques to help you to manage your anxiety and stay focused on the road. Speed limits. What's the national speed limit on motorways for cars and motorcycles?
Select the correct answer. 30 miles per hour, 50 miles per hour, 60 miles per hour, 70 miles per hour.
The national speed limit for cars and motorcycles on a motorway is 70 miles per hour, 112 kilometers per hour. This limit applies to all lanes. Obey any signs showing a lower speed limit. The national speed limit for cars and motorcycles on a motorway is 70 miles per hour, 112 kilometers per hour. This limit applies to all lanes. Obey any signs showing a lower speed limit.
A vehicle towing a trailer
is restricted to a lower speed limit of 60 miles per hour, 96 kilometers per hour. Isn't allowed to travel in the right-hand lane of a motorway with 3 or more lanes, unless there are lane closures.
in Northern Ireland shouldn't use the right-hand lane of a 3-lane motorway. Tip: you can use your hazard lights to warn traffic behind you that the traffic ahead is slowing down or stopping suddenly.
Switch them off as soon as following traffic has reacted to your signal. When you're approaching roadworks, watch for lower speed limits, especially if there's a contraflow system.
You should obey all speed limits. Keep a safe distance from the vehicle ahead.
See Section 4, Safety Margins, for more information about contraflow systems. Reducing congestion. Traffic management tries to reduce congestion and make journey times more reliable. Where this is in use, mandatory speed limit signs will show on the gantries. The speed limit helps to keep the traffic speed constant so that traffic is less likely to bunch up and journey times can be improved. Definition. Mandatory speed limit. The maximum speed at which you may travel. Sometimes the hard shoulder is used as a normal traffic lane. You'll know when you can use this because a speed limit sign will be shown above all lanes, including the hard shoulder. A red cross showing above the hard shoulder means that you shouldn't travel in this lane and it should be used only in an emergency or breakdown. Emergency areas have been built in these areas for use in cases of emergency or breakdown. Traffic officers operate in England and Wales, covering motorways and some A-class roads. They can stop and direct anyone on a motorway or an A road. Respond to calls made on roadside emergency telephones. Lane markings. Reflective studs help you to see where you are on the carriageway, especially at night or in fog. Different colors are used in different places. Green, between the carriageway and slip roads. White, between lanes. Amber, between the edge of the carriageway and the central reservation. Red, between the hard shoulder and carriageway. Fluorescent green/yellow, at contraflow systems and roadworks. Stopping and breakdowns. Motorways are designed to keep traffic moving, so you mustn't stop on the motorway unless you have to. Only stop on the motorway if flashing red lights show above every lane. When told to do so by the police, Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency, DVSA, officers or traffic officers. In a traffic jam. In an emergency or breakdown. Move over if signals on the overhead gantries advise you to do so. Should you need to stop for any other reason, such as to have a rest, make a phone call or look at a map, either leave at the next exit or go to a service area. If your vehicle breaks down or a tire has a puncture, try to get onto the hard shoulder and call for help. If you can, use one of the emergency telephones. These are
normally at 1 mile intervals.
Marker posts at 100-meter intervals point you in the direction of the nearest phone. Connected directly to a control center, where the operator will deal with your call and direct the appropriate services to help you. When you're using an emergency phone, stand facing the oncoming traffic so that you can see any hazards approaching. For example, the draft from a large vehicle driving past could take you by surprise.
If you decide to use your mobile phone, make a note of your location, the number on the nearest marker post, before you make the call.
Give this information to the emergency services.
Having parked your car on the hard shoulder, switch on your hazard lights to warn other drivers that you've broken down.
Switch on the side lights at night or if visibility is poor. Don't open the off-side doors, those nearest the carriageway.
You and your passengers should leave the vehicle by the near side doors, away from the traffic.
Wait on the embankment near your vehicle, but away from the hard shoulder, in case another vehicle crashes into yours. When you're ready to return to the carriageway, wait for a safe gap in the traffic and then drive along the hard shoulder to gain speed before moving out onto the main carriageway.
If you can't get onto the hard shoulder when you break down, switch on your hazard warning lights. Leave your vehicle only when you can get off the carriageway safely. Meeting the standards. You must be able to join a motorway or dual carriageway safely and responsibly from the left or the right. Allow for other road users joining or leaving the motorway. Change lanes safely and responsibly. You must know and understand that you mustn't stop on a motorway except in an emergency. That you mustn't pick anybody up on a motorway. Set anybody down on a motorway. Walk on a motorway, except in an emergency. The need to look well ahead for other road users joining or leaving the motorway or for queuing traffic that some stretches of motorway may have. Local, active traffic management, sometimes called smart motorways. Control systems installed, which will change speed limits and the direction of flow in particular lanes. You must obey the instructions given by these systems. Think about: at what speed should you be driving when you join the motorway? What should you do if you miss the exit that you want to take off the motorway? What information do the marker posts give you? What should you do if your car breaks down on the motorway? Things to discuss and practice with your instructor. These are just a few examples of what you could discuss and practice with your instructor. Read more about motorway driving to come up with your own ideas. Discuss with your instructor how you should join the motorway and what to look out for as you do so. The different national speed limits for various vehicles on the motorway, and in which lanes these vehicles may travel. What you should do if you break down on the motorway. What ATM stands for and its purpose on the motorway. Practice with your instructor. Learner drivers can have driving lessons on motorways, but only with an approved driving instructor, ADI, and in a car fitted with dual controls that's clearly displaying L plates. This practice will give you valuable experience that will help you when you've passed your test. In addition, you should practice with your instructor on a dual carriageway, as some of the techniques are the same as driving on the motorway. For example, joining from a slip road, lane discipline, and driving at higher speeds. Identifying motorway signs, signals, and road markings from Know Your Traffic signs, and the official highway code. How do smart motorways prevent traffic bunching? By using higher speed limits, by using advisory speed limits, by using minimum speed limits, by using variable speed limits.
When a smart motorway is operating, you must follow the mandatory signs on the gantries above each lane, including the hard shoulder. Variable speed limits help keep the traffic moving and also help to prevent bunching.
When should you use the left-hand lane of a motorway? When your vehicle breaks down, when you're overtaking slower traffic in the other lanes, when you're making a phone call, when the road ahead is clear.
You should drive in the left-hand lane whenever possible. Only use the other lanes for overtaking or when directed to do so by signals. Using other lanes when the left-hand lane is empty can frustrate drivers behind you.
What should you do when you're approaching roadworks on a motorway? Speed up to clear the area quickly. Always use the hard shoulder. Obey the speed limit. Stay very close to the vehicle in front.
Be aware of reduced speed limits at roadworks. Speed limits shown inside a red circle are mandatory and cameras are often used to enforce the reduced limit. Slow down in good time and keep your distance from the vehicle in front.
You're driving on the motorway.
Which lane should you get into well before you reach your exit?
The middle lane, the left-hand lane, the hard shoulder, the right-hand lane.
You'll see the first advanced direction sign 1 mile from a motorway exit. If you're traveling at 60 miles per hour in the right-hand lane, you'll only have about 50 seconds before you reach the countdown markers. There'll be another sign at the half-mile point. Don't cut across lanes of traffic at the last moment, move to the left-hand lane in good time.
Which vehicles are prohibited from using the motorway? Powered mobility scooters,
Motorcycles over 50 cc,
double-deck buses, cars with automatic transmission.
Motorways mustn't be used by pedestrians, cyclists, motorcycles under 50 cc, certain slow-moving vehicles without permission, and powered wheelchairs/mobility scooters.
What restrictions apply to people who have a provisional driving license?
They can't drive over 30 miles per hour, they can't drive at night, they can't drive unaccompanied, they can't drive with more than one passenger.
You won't be able to drive unaccompanied until you've passed your practical driving test. If you haven't driven on the motorway while you were learning, ask your instructor to take you for a lesson on the motorway when you've passed your test. Alternatively, you could take part in the Pass Plus scheme. This has been created for new drivers, and includes motorway driving. Ask your instructor for details.
What color are the reflective studs between the hard shoulder and the left-hand lane of a motorway? Green, red,
White, amber.
Red studs are placed between the edge of the carriageway and the hard shoulder. Where slip roads leave or join the motorway, the studs are green.
Northern Ireland exempt.
You're towing a trailer along a 3-lane motorway. When may you use the right-hand lane? When there are lane closures, when there's slow-moving traffic, when you can maintain a high speed, when large vehicles are in the left and center lanes.
If you're towing a caravan or trailer, you mustn't use the right-hand lane of a motorway with 3 or more lanes except in certain specified circumstances, such as when lanes are closed.
How should you use the lanes on a motorway? Use the lane that has the least traffic. Keep to the left-hand lane unless you're overtaking. Overtake using the lane that's clearest. Stay in one lane until you reach your exit.
You should normally travel in the left-hand lane unless you're overtaking a slower-moving vehicle. When you've finished overtaking, move back into the left-hand lane, but don't cut across in front of the vehicle that you've overtaken.
Northern Ireland exempt.
You have stopped in an emergency area. What must you do before you rejoin the carriageway? Use the emergency telephone. Give an arm signal as you are moving off. Switch on your vehicle's headlights. Move away with your hazard lights on.
To rejoin the carriageway from an emergency area, you must use the emergency telephone and follow the operator's advice. A lane may have to be closed so that you can rejoin the carriageway safely.
What's the speed limit for a car towing a trailer on a motorway?
40 miles per hour, 50 miles per hour, 60 miles per hour, 70 miles per hour.
If you're towing a small, light trailer, it won't reduce your vehicle's performance by very much and it may not be visible in your mirrors. However, strong winds or buffeting from large vehicles might cause the trailer to snake from side to side. Be aware of your speed and don't exceed the reduced speed limit imposed on vehicles towing trailers.
What helps to reduce traffic bunching on a motorway? Variable speed limits, contraflow systems, national speed limits, lane closures.
Congestion can be reduced by keeping traffic at a constant speed. At busy times, maximum speed limits are displayed on overhead gantries. These can be varied quickly, depending on the amount of traffic. By keeping to a constant speed on busy sections of motorway, overall journey times are normally improved.
You're traveling along a motorway. When are you allowed to overtake on the left? When you can see well ahead that the hard shoulder is clear. When the traffic in the right-hand lane is signaling right. When you warn drivers behind by signaling left. When in queues and traffic to your right is moving more slowly than you are.
Never overtake on the left, unless the traffic is moving in queues and the queue on your right is moving more slowly than the one you're in.
You stop on the hard shoulder of a motorway and use the emergency telephone. Where's the best place to wait for help to arrive? Next to the phone, well away from the carriageway, with your vehicle, on the hard shoulder.
When you're on the hard shoulder, you're at risk of being injured by motorway traffic. The safest place to wait is away from the carriageway, but near enough to see the emergency services arriving.
You're on a smart motorway.
What does it mean if a red cross is showing above the hard shoulder and mandatory speed limits above all other lanes?
The hard shoulder can be used as a rest area if you feel tired. The hard shoulder is for emergency or breakdown use only. The hard shoulder can be used as a normal running lane. The hard shoulder has a speed limit of 50 miles per hour.
A red cross above the hard shoulder shows that it's closed as a running lane and should only be used for emergencies or breakdowns. On a smart motorway, the hard shoulder may be used as a running lane at busy times. This will be shown by a mandatory speed limit on the gantry above the hard shoulder.
What would you expect to find at a contraflow system on a motorway?
Temporary traffic lights, lower speed limits, wider lanes than normal,
Road humps.
When approaching a contraflow system, reduce speed in good time and obey all speed limits. You may be traveling in a narrower lane than normal, with no permanent barrier between you and the oncoming traffic. Be aware that the hard shoulder may be used for traffic and the road ahead could be obstructed by slow-moving or broken-down vehicles.
You're on a motorway that isn't subject to smart motorway regulations. When should you use the hard shoulder?
when you're stopping in an emergency, when you're leaving the motorway, when you're stopping for a rest, when you're joining the motorway.
Don't use the hard shoulder for stopping unless it's an emergency. If you want to stop for any other reason, go to the next exit or service area.
When would you use the right-hand lane on a 3-lane motorway?
When you're turning right, when you're overtaking, when you're traveling above the speed limit, when you're trying to save fuel.
The right-hand lane of the motorway is for overtaking. Sometimes you may be directed into a right-hand lane as a result of roadworks or a traffic incident. This will be indicated by signs or officers directing the traffic.
What color are the reflective studs between a motorway and a slip road?
Amber, white,
Green, red.
The studs between the carriageway and the hard shoulder are normally red. These change to green where there's a slip road, helping you to identify slip roads when visibility is poor or when it's dark.
Your vehicle broke down on the hard shoulder of a motorway, but has now been repaired.
How should you rejoin the main carriageway?
Move out onto the carriageway, then build up your speed. Move out onto the carriageway using your hazard warning lights.
Gain speed on the hard shoulder before moving out onto the carriageway. Wait on the hard shoulder until someone flashes their headlights at you.
Signal your intention and build up sufficient speed on the hard shoulder so that you can filter into a safe gap in the traffic. Don't push your way into a small gap or cause other traffic to alter speed or direction.
Why is it particularly important to check your vehicle before making a long motorway journey? You'll have to do more harsh braking on motorways. Motorway services areas don't deal with breakdowns.
The road surface will wear down the tires faster. Continuous high speeds increase the risk of your vehicle breaking down.
Before you start your journey, make sure that your vehicle can cope with the demands of high-speed driving. You should check a number of things, the main ones being fuel, oil, water and tires. You also need to plan rest stops if you're making a long journey.
When may you stop on a motorway?
If you have to read a map, When you're tired and need a rest, if your mobile phone rings, in an emergency or breakdown.
You shouldn't normally stop on a motorway, but there may be occasions when you need to do so. If your vehicle breaks down or there's an emergency, stop on the hard shoulder and use the emergency telephones to call for assistance.
Your vehicle has broken down on a motorway.
In which direction should you walk to find the nearest emergency telephone?
With the traffic flow, facing oncoming traffic, in the direction shown on the marker posts, in the direction of the nearest exit.
Along the hard shoulder there are marker posts at 100-meter intervals. These will direct you to the nearest emergency telephone.
What should you do if you're driving on a motorway and you miss the exit that you wanted to take? Carefully reverse along the hard shoulder, carry on to the next exit, carefully reverse in the left-hand lane, make a U-turn at the next gap in the central reservation.
It's illegal to reverse, cross the central reservation or drive against the traffic flow on a motorway. If you miss your exit, carry on until you reach the next one. Ask yourself why you missed your exit. If you think that your concentration is fading, take a break before continuing your journey.
You're on a smart motorway.
What does it mean when a red cross is displayed above the hard shoulder?
Pull up in this lane to answer your mobile phone. Use this lane as a running lane. This lane can be used if you need a rest.
You must not travel in this lane.
Some motorways have been redesigned as smart motorways. At certain times, the hard shoulder will be open as a running lane. However, a red cross above the hard shoulder shows that it isn't open as a running lane and should only be used for emergencies and breakdowns.
Your vehicle has broken down on a motorway.
What should you do if you aren't able to get onto the hard shoulder?
Switch on your hazard warning lights, stop the traffic behind and ask for help. Attempt to repair your vehicle quickly, stand behind your vehicle to warn others.
If you can't get your vehicle onto the hard shoulder, use your hazard warning lights to warn others. Leave your vehicle only when you can safely get clear of the carriageway. Don't try to repair the vehicle or attempt to place any warning device on the carriageway.
What's the national speed limit for a car or motorcycle on a motorway? 50 miles per hour, 60 miles per hour, 70 miles per hour, 80 miles per hour.
The national speed limit for a car or motorcycle on a motorway is 70 miles per hour. Lower speed limits may be in force, for example, at roadworks. Variable speed limits also operate in some areas when the motorway is very busy. Cars or motorcycles towing trailers are subject to a lower speed limit.
Traffic officers operate on motorways and some primary routes in England and Wales. What are they authorized to do? Stop and arrest drivers who break the law, repair broken-down vehicles on the motorway,
Issue fixed penalty notices,
stop and direct anyone on a motorway.
Traffic officers don't have enforcement powers but are able to stop and direct people on motorways and some A-class roads. They operate in England and Wales and work in partnership with the police at incidents, providing a highly trained and visible service. They're recognized by an orange and yellow jacket, and their vehicle has yellow and black markings.
You're traveling in the left-hand lane of a 3-lane motorway.
How should you react to traffic joining from a slip road?
Increase your speed to ensure they join behind you.
Adjust your speed or change lane if you can do so safely.
Maintain a steady speed. Switch on your hazard warning lights.
Plan well ahead when approaching a slip road. If you see traffic joining the motorway, be prepared to adjust your speed or move to another lane if it's safe to do so. This can help the flow of traffic joining the motorway, especially at peak times.
Your vehicle breaks down on a motorway and you manage to stop on the hard shoulder. What should you do if you use your mobile phone to call for help? Stand at the rear of the vehicle while making the call. Phone a friend and ask them to come and collect you. Wait in the car for the emergency services to arrive. Check your location from the nearest marker posts beside the hard shoulder.
You should use an emergency telephone when you break down on the motorway. Only use your mobile if this isn't possible. The emergency services need to know your exact location so they can reach you as quickly as possible. Look for a number on the nearest marker post beside the hard shoulder. Give this number when you call the emergency services.
You're in the right-hand lane of a 3-lane motorway. What do these overhead signs mean?
Move to the left and reduce your speed to 50 miles per hour.
There are roadworks 50 meters, 55 yards, ahead. Use the hard shoulder until you've passed the hazard. Leave the motorway at the next exit.
You must obey these signs, even if there appear to be no problems ahead. There could be queuing traffic or another hazard that you can't see yet.
What should you do immediately after joining a motorway?
Try to overtake. Readjust your mirrors. Position your vehicle in the center lane. Stay in the left-hand lane.
When you've just joined a motorway, stay in the left-hand lane long enough to get used to the higher speeds of motorway traffic before considering overtaking.
What should you do while you're driving or riding along a motorway?
Look much further ahead than you would on other roads. Travel much faster than you would on other roads. Maintain a shorter separation distance than you would on other roads. Concentrate more than you would on other roads.
Traffic on motorways usually travels faster than on other roads. You need to be looking further ahead to give yourself more time to react to any hazard that may develop.
What do these motorway signs mean?
They're countdown markers to a bridge.
They're distance markers to the next telephone.
They're countdown markers to the next exit.
They warn of a police control ahead.
The exit from a motorway is indicated by countdown markers. These are positioned 90 meters, 100 yards, apart, the first being 270 meters, 300 yards, from the start of the slip road. Move into the left-hand lane well before you reach the start of the slip road.
Where are amber reflective studs found on a motorway?
Between the hard shoulder and the carriageway. Between the acceleration lane and the carriageway. Between the central reservation and the carriageway. Between each pair of lanes.
On motorways, reflective studs of various colors are fixed in the road between the lanes. These help you to identify which lane you're in when it's dark or in poor visibility. Amber-colored studs are found on the right-hand edge of the main carriageway, next to the central reservation.
You're joining a motorway from a slip road. How should you deal with traffic already on the motorway? Carry on along the hard shoulder until you see a safe gap. Stop at the end of the slip road and look for a safe gap. Use the slip road to accelerate until you're moving much faster than the motorway traffic. Match your speed to traffic in the left-hand lane and filter into a safe gap.
You should give way to traffic already on the motorway. Where possible, traffic may move over to let you in, but don't force your way into the traffic stream. Traffic could be traveling at high speed, so try to match your speed to filter in without affecting the traffic flow.
When would you use an emergency refuge area on a smart motorway?
In cases of emergency or breakdown, if you think you'll be involved in a road rage incident, to stop and check where you are, to make a private phone call.
On smart motorways, emergency refuge areas are built at the side of the hard shoulder. If you break down, try to get your vehicle into the refuge, where there's an emergency telephone. The phone connects directly to a control center. Remember to take care when rejoining the motorway, especially if the hard shoulder is being used as a running lane.
Why is it important to make full use of the slip road as you join a motorway?
Because there's space available to turn round if you need to allow you direct access to the overtaking lanes, to allow you to fit safely into the traffic flow in the left-hand lane, because you can continue on the hard shoulder.
Try to join the motorway without affecting the progress of the traffic in the left-hand lane and always give way to traffic already on the motorway. At busy times, you may have to slow down to merge into slow-moving traffic.
How should you position yourself when you use the emergency telephone on a motorway? Stay close to the carriageway, face the oncoming traffic, keep your back to the traffic, stand on the hard shoulder.
Traffic is passing you at speed. If the draft from a large lorry catches you by surprise, it could blow you off balance and even onto the carriageway. By facing the oncoming traffic, you can see approaching lorries and so be prepared for their draft. You'll also be in a position to see any other hazards approaching.
Which vehicles should use the left-hand lane on a 3-lane motorway? Any vehicle that isn't overtaking, large vehicles only, emergency vehicles only,
slow vehicles only.
On a motorway, all traffic should use the left-hand lane unless overtaking. When overtaking a number of slower vehicles, move back to the left-hand lane when you're safely passed. Check your mirrors frequently and don't stay in the middle or right-hand lane if the left-hand lane is free. On a motorway, all traffic should use the left-hand lane unless overtaking. When overtaking a number of slower vehicles, move back to the left-hand lane when you're safely passed. Check your mirrors frequently and don't stay in the middle or right-hand lane if the left-hand lane is free.
On a smart motorway, what does this sign mean?
Use any lane except the hard shoulder. Use the hard shoulder only. Use the 3 right-hand lanes only. Use all the lanes, including the hard shoulder.
You must obey mandatory speed limit signs above motorway lanes, including the hard shoulder. In this case, you can use the hard shoulder as a running lane, but you should look for any vehicles that may have broken down and may be blocking the hard shoulder.
You're on a motorway. What must you do if there's a red cross showing above every lane? Pull onto the hard shoulder, slow down and watch for further signals, leave at the next exit, stop and wait.
A red cross signal above all lanes means you must stop and wait. Don't change lanes and don't try to continue any further along the motorway.
You're traveling along a motorway. Where would you find a crawler or climbing lane? On a steep gradient, before a service area, before a junction, along the hard shoulder.
Large, slow-moving vehicles can hinder the progress of other traffic. On a steep gradient, an extra crawler lane may be provided for slow-moving vehicles to allow faster-moving traffic to flow more easily.
How should you rejoin the motorway after a breakdown on the hard shoulder? Build up speed on the hard shoulder before looking for a safe gap in the traffic. Move straight out into the left-hand lane as you are not allowed to drive on the hard shoulder. Wait until a vehicle in the left-hand lane signals to you that it's safe to rejoin. Keep your hazard lights flashing until you have safely rejoined the carriageway.
To rejoin a motorway from the hard shoulder, you first need to build up speed on the hard shoulder. You can then look for a safe gap in the traffic in the left-hand lane. Watch for traffic that may be returning from a lane on the right into the left-hand lane.
You're driving on a motorway. What does it mean if the car in front shows its hazard warning lights for a short time? The driver wants you to overtake. The other car is going to change lanes. Traffic ahead is slowing or stopping suddenly. There's a police speed check ahead.
If the vehicle in front shows its hazard warning lights, there may be an incident, stopped traffic or queuing traffic ahead. By keeping a safe distance from the vehicle in front, you're able to look beyond it and see any hazards well ahead.
You're on a 3-lane motorway. Which lane are you in if there are red reflective studs on your left and white ones to your right? In the right-hand lane, in the middle lane, on the hard shoulder, in the left-hand lane.
The colors of the reflective studs on the motorway and their locations are: red, between the hard shoulder and the carriageway; white, between lanes; amber, between the carriageway and the central reservation; green, along slip road exits and entrances; bright green/yellow, at roadworks and contraflow systems.
Where should you stop to rest if you feel tired while you're traveling along a motorway?
On the hard shoulder, at the nearest service area, on a slip road, on the central reservation.
If you feel tired, stop at the nearest service area. If that's too far away, leave the motorway at the next exit and find a safe place to stop. You mustn't stop on the carriageway or hard shoulder of a motorway except in an emergency, when in a traffic queue, or when signaled to do so by a police officer, a traffic officer or traffic signals.
What's the national speed limit on motorways for cars and motorcycles?
30 miles per hour, 50 miles per hour, 60 miles per hour, 70 miles per hour.
Traveling at the national speed limit doesn't allow you to hog the right-hand lane. Always use the left-hand lane whenever possible. When leaving a motorway, get into the left-hand lane well before your exit. Reduce your speed on the slip road and look out for sharp bends or curves and traffic queuing at roundabouts.
What color are the reflective studs between the lanes on a motorway? Green,
Amber,
white, red.
White studs are found between the lanes on motorways. They reflect back the light from your headlights. This is especially useful in bad weather, when visibility is restricted.
Your car gets a puncture while you're driving on the motorway.
What should you do when you've stopped on the hard shoulder?
Carefully change the wheel yourself. Use an emergency telephone and call for help. Try to wave down another vehicle for help. Only change the wheel if you have a passenger to help you.
Park as far to the left as you can and leave the vehicle by the near side door. Don't attempt even simple repairs. Instead, walk to an emergency telephone on your side of the road and phone for help. While waiting for help to arrive, stay by your car, keeping well away from the carriageway and hard shoulder.
You're on a smart motorway.
What does it mean when a mandatory speed limit is displayed above the hard shoulder?
You shouldn't travel in this lane. The hard shoulder can be used as a running lane. You can park on the hard shoulder if you feel tired. You can pull up in this lane to answer a mobile phone.
A mandatory speed limit sign above the hard shoulder shows that this part of the road can be used as a running lane between junctions. You must stay within the speed limit. Look out for vehicles that may have broken down and could be blocking the hard shoulder.
Your vehicle breaks down on a motorway and you need to call for help. Why might it be better to use an emergency roadside telephone rather than a mobile phone? It connects you to a local garage. Using a mobile phone will distract other drivers. It allows easy location by the emergency services.
Mobile phones don't work on motorways.
On a motorway, it's best to use a roadside emergency telephone so that the emergency services are able to find you easily. The location of the nearest telephone is shown by an arrow on marker posts at the edge of the hard shoulder. If you use a mobile, find out the number on the nearest marker post before you call. This number will let the operator know where you are and in which direction you're traveling.
You're driving on a motorway and have to slow down suddenly due to a hazard ahead. How can you warn drivers behind of the hazard? Switch on your hazard warning lights. Switch on your headlights. Sound your horn. Flash your headlights.
Using your hazard warning lights, as well as your brake lights, will give the traffic behind an extra warning of the problem ahead. Only use them for long enough for your warning to be seen.
On a 3-lane motorway, which lane should you use if there's no traffic ahead? Left,
Right,
center, either the right or center.
On a 3-lane motorway, you should travel in the left-hand lane unless you're overtaking. This applies regardless of the speed at which you're traveling.
When are you allowed to stop on a motorway?
When you need to walk and get fresh air.
When you wish to pick up hitchhikers. When you're signaled to do so by traffic signals. When you need to use a mobile telephone.
You must stop if overhead gantry signs show a red cross above every lane on the motorway. If any of the other lanes doesn't show a red cross, you may move into that lane and continue if it's safe to do so.
Which vehicles aren't allowed to use the right-hand lane of a 3-lane motorway? Small delivery vans.
Motorcycles.
Vehicles towing a trailer.
Motorcycle and sidecar outfits.
On the motorway, any vehicle towing a trailer is restricted to 60 miles per hour. It isn't allowed in the right-hand lane, as it might hold up faster-moving traffic that wishes to overtake in that lane.
What should you do when going through a contraflow system on a motorway?
Use dipped headlights.
Keep a good distance from the vehicle ahead.
Switch lanes to keep the traffic flowing. Stay close to the vehicle ahead to reduce queues.
At roadworks, and especially where a contraflow system is operating, a speed restriction is likely to be in place. Keep to the lower speed limit, and don't switch lanes, get too close to the vehicle in front of you. Be aware that there will be no permanent barrier between you and the oncoming traffic.